Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're all doing well. Today, we're going to talk about the top 3 exotics you should be refocusing just now to get yourself prepared for Edge of Fate. As we know, armour stats are changing in Edge of Fate, and your currently god roll exotics might not be god rolled come Edge of Fate. Reason why? Mobility. Mobility is getting changed into the weapon stat, and it's arguably going to be the most important stat that you need to consider while build crafting in Edge of Fate. Now, if you're a Titan main or a Warlock main, you will not have any high mobility armour pieces. If you're a Hunter, you should be okay, but I'll still go over the top 3 for each class. A caveat to this is we know that we're getting 20 tokens. We're going to be able to trade in Ada 1 in Edge of Fate, and she'll be able to re-roll her stats or make the exotics under a certain archetype of armour. But we don't know what this is going to look like or how reliable it's going to be. So for those who want to be extra prepared, say you're taking part in the day 1 contest raid race, then this video is for you. First off, I just want to explain how exactly armour stat distribution works in Destiny 2. So for the first 3 top stats, consider this a bucket, and then for the bottom 3 stats, consider that a bucket. So from between mobility, recovery and resilience, you can have one spiky stat out of this, and for intellect, melee and grenade, it's going to be called, you'll be able to have one spiky stat for this as well. So you can have on an armour piece just now, you can have say high mobility paired with high intellect. Bear this in mind when we talk about the exotics, because some of them you might think, why would I want weapons on that? But we are essentially trying to replace high resilience rolls here, because resilience will be get changed to health, and health isn't too important in Edge of Fate because we will all be 10 resilience as standard. So Titans, you're up first, and we'll go from lowest to highest. So number 3, I would say, would be Precious Scars. Now, how Precious Scars works is if you get a kill with a weapon that matches the same element as your super, you'll be granted Restoration on kill. Now for me, it seems like a perfect pairing to the weapon stat. If you have high weapons, then you will gain up to 15% of an increased damage buff passively, and when you kill with your buffed weapon, then you'll be granted Restoration. So your weapons are looping into your healing, and your healing is looping into your weapons. For me, this is a perfect pairing, and it's certainly one of the exotic I'm currently chasing to get high weapons on. For the secondary stat on the bottom bucket, grenade, melee, intellect, well, I'm going to suggest intellect because the higher intellect, the more recharge you get, and anything over 100, you'll actually increase your super damage up to 45%. The secondary effect on Precious Scars gives you and your allies an overshield whenever you're revived. Again, thinking of a day 1 raid setting, this just adds a little bit more survivability, and during contest mode, that extra damage for your weapons will go a long way. Next up, for my number 2, would be Hazardous Propulsion. Now Hazardous Propulsion, when you get critical hits or kills, you can gain up to 6 charges of rockets on the left hand side, and when you use your class ability, these rockets are sent out, dealing a good amount of damage to enemies. They will also buff any weapons that use these rockets for a damage increase of 35% for 10 seconds. So if you're using a rocket launcher or you're using a rocket sidearm, the new rocket pulse rifle we'll be getting in Edge of Fate, I assume will be buffed by this. Also things like Grand Overture, it's micro rocket damage that stacks up that you can special reload to fire. These also get buffed up to 35%. So if you have a 15% damage boost with 200 in the weapon stat, you're going to kill adds more easily, get your extras rocket charges a lot quicker. Then for bigger targets or bosses, you can pull out your buffed Grand Overture, rocket launcher, and the 15% damage boost from 200 weapons will stack with Twilight Garrison's damage bonus, on top of anything else like weapon surges. It will absolutely delete ads and bosses in the right circumstances. And the secondary stat I would chase for this would be either class, so you've got your barricade a lot more often, ready to go when you get your 6 charges, or again, intellect. I just think that having high intellect is going to be a bonus on any build come Edge of Fate. Getting class and weapons together might be a bit harder because they're from the same bucket, so if you can get an extra bump in what is currently recovery, great. If not, then just look for that weapons and intellect combo. And finally, the number 1 exotic I would chase to try and get a better weapon stat, well, mobility stat, would be Syntheseps. Syntheseps are just such a great exotic all round for Titans because most of our class abilities focus around the melee. So Syntheseps give you 50% of an increased damage buff to your melee when surrounded by 3 or more enemies, and also grant a bump in super damage too. Pair that with a high mobility / weapon stat, then you've got the 3 cores of your neutral game getting buffed. Your weapon damage, your super damage, and your melee damage. So everything that a Titan would want is checked off by having a high mobility / weapon stat on Syntheseps. The secondary stat I would go for would either be melee if you're looking for a more melee oriented build, or intellect if you're going for a more super focused build. Again, the more stats you have over 100 means that either your super or your melee damage will be buffed the closer it is to 200. Hunters, you're up next, and I just want to say that you'll probably already have high mobility armour for these exotics, but you might need to refocus them to get a good secondary perk. For just now, resilience plays such a high part in today's armour meta for the damage resist, but as I mentioned previously, we're all going to be 10 resilience standard, so you might have to reroll these exotics to get high mobility and then a high bottom bucket stat like intellect, grenade, melee, whatever you're choosing. So number 3 is actually a toss-up between 2 void specific perks, and those are Omnioculus and Falcon's Halberg. For Omnioculus, anytime you make yourself or an ally invisible, you get a damage resist bonus up to ×3 than resist is, and I think this would pair well with the weapon stat, so you've got damage resist and weapon damage built in to your class just through stats and exotic, and then you can focus into whatever else you want. So class, but as I mentioned, it might be a bit difficult, or for Omnioculus specifically, you could do melee so that you could have more smoke bombs, things like that. Gear Falcons would be good because anytime you dodge, you give your void weapons volatile rounds. So if you have a repulsor brace weapon and then Gear Falcons, you can give yourself destabilising rounds along with a void overshield plus the 15% damage bonus to your weapons, so it would just keep that Gear Falcons loop on a constant cycle. And then you can pick Stylus Executioner as well. When you kill a void debuff target, you go invisible, so you're getting survivability through overshields and invisibility, and then you're buffing your weapon damage and your weapons are getting destabilising rounds as well. Your secondary perk is kind of a gambler's choice for this because the builder would be focused more so on your class ability, but this will be getting changed to recovery in Edge of Fate, and to get a high mobility, high recovery armour piece would be very difficult. So depending on what you fancy more, if you like smoke bombs, go for melee. If you want more intellect, go for that so you can have a terror more often, or if you want to add a little bit of oomph to your grenades as well, focus on your grenades. Next up would be the star of the show for any hunter build this past season, and that would be Gifted Conviction. This exotic, especially on Prismatic or Arc, is very potent, and it can only be made better by having a high weapon / mobility stat for Edge of Fate. What it does when you use your class ability with Ascension, when you use Ascension, you project little mini bombs that will jolt and blind targets, and also anytime you jolt a target via jolting feedback or volt shot, then you will gain an increase in your damage resist also. Paired with Stylish Executioner and Prismatic, this gives you damage resist and invisibility, so it does Omnioculus much better, I believe, and also more free choice because you're on Prismatic. And then if you add the 200 weapon stat on top of that, your weapons will be getting a buff. So think about a hunter checklist, you're getting damage resist, invis, and also weapon damage as standard. Again, because this is tied into a class specific ability, it will be difficult to get high mobility and high recovery on an exotic piece of armour, so I would actually probably go for intellect for this if you can get it, because prismatic super options are a lot more free reign than say being on arc, but even arc has that big stick that you can fling at somebody, which is great, so buffing your super damage would be a no-brainer for me, so go for mobility and intellect. Finally, number one choice for hunters to focus coming up to Edge of Fate would be Foe Tracer. Reason being is this is a pure boss damaging exotic in my eyes, especially useful for day one contest raiding. So Foe Tracer, anytime you damage an enemy with an ability that matches your weapon type, then that gets a ×4 surge. Then with 200 weapons you will gain 15% on top of that, so 25%, then plus the 15%. So for example, if you're damaging a boss with Queenbreaker, then you would damage it with an arc ability, so say an arc grenade, then you would get ×4 weapon surge for Queensbreaker, and then on top of that you've got 200 weapons, which is an extra 15%. So if you're trying to squeeze as much damage as you can during a day one contest raiding setting, then I would say Foe Tracer would definitely be a number one pick. Secondary stat for this would probably be intellect again, just so that if you have a super ready as well, then it'll do that little bit more damage, or you can have your super more often with the recharge rate. And last, but certainly not least, come to my Warlock players. So for number 3, I've got two choices because I can't make my mind up which is more important, depending on the situation, and that would be Zenithal Mask or Speaker's Sight. Both are exotic helmet pieces. Zenithal Mask, what it does is it regenerates trace rifle ammo for you passively, and also when you mark a big target and that target is killed by teammates, that enemy will drop heavy ammo. Very important in a day one setting, and 200 weapons just plays into the central theme of trace rifles for the build. Your trace rifles will be doing 15% more damage passively. Secondary stat to look out for would probably be intellect or grenade, depending on how you want to make the build. If you're on a solo warlock who is running well primarily, then definitely I would say run intellect, or if you're using a more grenade centric build, then look for grenade. For my other number 3 spot is Speaker's Sight. Reason being is Speaker's Sight is amazing in harder tier content, so things like a day 1 raid setting. Whenever you throw your healing grenade down, it creates a healing turret which keeps you and your teammates alive, and especially if you run a weapon with Demolitionist, an extra 15% weapon damage, especially in a day 1 raid setting, will clear ads more easily, grant you grenade energy, allowing you to throw more healing turrets on the battlefield, which will keep you and your teammates alive. It just brings massive value to your build for you and your teammates, especially in the harder content. Secondary stat to look for, it's quite obvious, it would be grenade. The more grenade energy you have, the more returns you get on Demolitionist kills, along with anything else, allowing you to throw your healing turrets more often. Number 2, I would say, would be Getaway Artists. Now on Prismatic, Getaway Artist paired with Bleak Watcher turrets is still an amazing build, great for crowd control, and I think it can only be made better with 200 weapon stat, because the gameplay loop is very passive. All you need to do is throw a grenade down and then you get your little turrets, and you're not really doing anything else bar using your weapons at this point, so why not have an extra 15% damage on top of that? In terms of the secondary stat, 100% go for grenade, because this will be centred around your build. The more grenade energy you have, the more turrets that you can throw down. And finally, the number one exotic choice would be Sanguine Alchemy. This is a pure boss exotic that focuses on weapon damage, so why not have an extra 15% damage on top of that? So for me, the gameplay loop is you complete the encounter with a normal exotic, so it can be Zenithal Mask, Speaker's Sight, Getaway Artists. You do need to be on a well for this. As soon as the boss phase starts, you pump down your well, and then you quickly change to a build that's got Sanguine Alchemy, and now you'll be doing 25% damage with Sanguine Alchemy, and then you can add the 15% damage from 200 weapons on top of it. Again, if you're trying to squeeze as much damage as you can during a day one raid setting, very much like Foe Tracer, this would be top priority for Warlock players. And finally, I just want to go over how exactly you can farm for exotics right now. So the ritual activities, Gambit, Crucible, Strikes, they'll give you 3 exotic engrams per week per character. But if an activity is get double rep, then farm that, because every vendor has an exotic engram at the end of their reward track when you reset your reputation rank with them. So for example, if it's double Crucible week, play Crucible on all 3 characters, get your exotic engrams, and you should hopefully have enough rep to do a reset to get another exotic engram. In terms of materials that you'll need, you'll either need exotic ciphers or ascendant shards. Now you can purchase 3 ascendant shards for cheap off a Raoul every reset, and exotic ciphers are quite easy to get through Sir, so just keep an eye out for him coming. Strange coins are your best friend here. Also, if you need ascendant shards, Grandmaster Nightfalls or tonics, the exotic tonics, you can get by crafting potions at Idle. Also, the new heresy mechanic that came in this season, the Ruin tablets. If you get any exotic tablets, you can focus for ascendant shards there. Also, you will need a lot of glimmer. Again, you can use potions or tablets, and make sure that you put on a glimmer booster on your ghost as well. And that's it. Thanks very much for your time. I do appreciate you checking out the video. What exotic are you going to be chasing? Let me know down below. Maybe I've missed one and I've not thought about properly. Please let me know. I'll be happy to talk about it in the comments. If you like what I do, please leave a like, comment, or even consider subscribing. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, and I'll be doing even more content as we get closer to Edge of Fate. I'm definitely in the preparation phase now, so for any tips and tricks that I come across, I'll definitely be sharing it with you guys. But on that, thanks very much for your time, and I'll see you soon for more Destiny 2 content. All the best, cheers.